Okay, good afternoon everyone. Haven't made a video for a while, so here goes. Just gonna fiddle with a few things first until we're kind of happy. Right, so the purpose of this exercise, there are millions of videos on YouTube about quad Cortex and how to use it and what have you, so I'm just going to show you how I use it. I've had it for a few months now and I've used it in a live setting, so I've got quite a bit of experience using it now, both in a studio setting, which is kind of what I've got at the moment through flat monitors, and then using it live with a band as well. And there are a few little tricks that you pick up along the way that you try that work, so I'm going to go through with you. So what you've got in front, hopefully you can see the screen there. So that's one of my main gig settings. So the band is Red Dogs, so I call that scene or preset. Sorry, it's a preset, so it's Red Dogs, which is the preset, and then there are various scenes. So if I'm playing live, if you swipe up from the bottom, then you've got basically all the different scenes. So there are 8 different scenes there. So I've got clean, heavy solar, 12-string sound, clean chorus, heavy chorus, and a clean wobble sort of sound. So I'll go through all of these and explain how I did them. So that's how it's laid out in terms of the quad Cortex. Quad means 4, so you've got the 4 pathways, and I'm using 2 pathways. So this is a trick that I picked up. I just looked on the internet how to program it, and it's fairly easy to work out. And one of the things that came up was to use 1 and the 3rd row separately, because you've got 2 processors, and so it's less effort. Theoretically, you've got more power, or it shares the load. Interestingly, if I haven't noticed a massive difference, but that's how I did it anyway. So it goes through the first line and then out to row 3, which is there, and then so that's row 3, it says previous row, and then it carries on processing, and then it goes out to all the main outs. So this is going out at the moment of the XLRs to my Zoom camera. I've got an additional line in here at the bottom which isn't normally there, and that's for the microphone, and the microphone is going into the quad Cortex, so you can process a mic as well as your guitar signal. So that's going in, and then it's going out to the multi-out as well, so it's joining the camera with the 2 outputs, the stereo outputs from the guitar signal. So I mean, this first of all, if I'm in, this is just like a clean sound, so I'm going to get rid of you. Okay, so my clean sound would be this. So that's a clean sound. It's I say clean, it's got a certain amount of fluff on it. So in terms of how I've got this set up, I've got 2 amps on 1 preset. I've got a clean amp and I've got the heavy amp on the 1 preset. And then using the scenes function, I basically switch between the 2 amps. So it's all on the same preset. Now the reason we do that, one of the main reasons, is because if you use presets, there's a gap or a lag between choosing the presets. So if you have a preset for clean and a preset for heavy, you'll notice a slight gap in volume. That's because it's obviously having to load up a new preset. If, however, you put 2 amps in 1 preset and then use scenes, then it's seamless. There's no gap whatsoever. So that's straight off. That's one little pick I got from the internet fairly quickly, how to do that. So that's why I've got these 2 pathways. So running through it, I've got the first thing, just so you can see, I've got a noise reduction there. So that's the adaptive gate. So I started off with the normal gate on the input, but I found the adaptive gate is a little bit more subtle, it's better, and I've got that turned all the way down to 9%, so it's turned down really low. It still works really well, even with quite heavy sounds, but that works quite nicely. And then it goes into a compressor, so I've got the opto comp compressor running on that. Again, nothing too crazy. Take it off. That's it off. So you can hear it sort of, it just tightens it all up. So that's on pretty much whenever I use the clean sound. Now the clean sound I'm using, in fact the amp for this is, there it is, it's a Lone Star. So it's a Lone Star, this is the 100 watt, so it's one of the presets that comes. And now I got this one, funnily enough, I got this from one of the first units I have, which was a Moore preamp live, and that there were two patches on that really stood out. One was the Lone Star, the Boogie Lone Star. The other one was a PRS Archon, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. So, and it turns out the Lone Star is pretty good on this as well. All those patches were also on the Moore ME300, I think it is, or is it GE300? I can't remember. Anyway, that a fantastic little unit. So I went looking for the Lone Star, and sure enough it does sound really good. So I'm using the Lone Star for kind of the cleany sounds with a little bit of edge. And then the other thing I've got, secret weapon, is that. So this is a neural capture, and this is the BBE Sonic Maximizer. Now I had one of these in the 90s when everyone had racks. And it's just like an exciter rack. It just enhances it clears up your signal, makes it a little bit clearer. So that runs all the time on anything that I've got on. So that's on permanently. And then the cabs. So cabs are an interesting thing because you can import millions of IRs. There are loads of IRs. There are loads of cabs on the Quad Cortex. Anyway, the one that I seem to come back to the most, and it's quite similar to something I had on the Moore, which was a Mesa Boogie cab. It's not the 4x12 cabs. Tried all of those. The ones that I find are the most natural and the most musical are, in fact, the 2x12 cabs. So this is a 2x12 Recto cab, and I think it's got vintage 30s, so these are original 90s vintage 30s in. And it just sounds to me the most natural, clean, and for dirty stuff as well. The mics I'm running on here, I've got just a good old Shure SM57 on the left, and then it's a ribbon mic, a ribbon 10. I can't remember what that's based on, but it's a ribbon mic on the right hand side. Just kind of, the ribbon just fills it out a little bit more, just gives it a tiny little bit more body. You could use a 421, the Sennheiser 421, it gives you a slightly different tone, or you can just run two dynamics, it still sounds pretty good. And I have the microphones pretty much dead center in the middle of the cone. I find that, to me, that's the most natural sound, right spot on in the middle. So that's the cab that I'm using. Okay, and then just some just some delay, so a little bit of ping pong delay, which you can hear, and that's pretty much it. So that's the basis for the clean tone anyway. Okay, and then variations on that. So I've got exactly the same setup, but if I want a chorus sound, so here we go. Quite a nice sort of King's X tone there, I think. So the chorus here that I'm using, let's have a look. So yeah, that's the TC, my TC 229 modulation, and the width setting, so I've got it as wide as possible, rate around about 1 hertz, so it's not too wobbly, full mix, and the depth is at about 30%. So you get a nice wide stereo chorus. And then, okay, variations on that. Then I've got the wobbly sound. So all I've added here is it's got the chorus on, and we've got a vibrato effect on. So it's vibrato and chorus to give you that sort of kind of sound. You could get that from a straight chorus, but I always like the sound of the vibrato, and the chorus just kind of lifts it up a little bit. So that's my sort of wobbly sound. Everything else is the same, so it's the same Lone Star. The volume is ever so slightly up when I use the chorus, because you tend to naturally, as it spreads out, as you get the stereo spread, you lose a little bit of the impact, so I just up the volume slightly to make up for that. And then going back to the clean tone, I can add a bit more fluff to that, so I've got an overdrive pedal on this. Oops. So again, this is a capture, neuro capture, and this is the Mad Professor overdrive, which again gives it a nice sort of with the compressor, you can do lead work with that. It sounds quite nice with a compressor on it as well. And then I tend to sort of switch that on and off depending on what we're doing in the set, and it will within the scene, it will, or the preset, sorry, it will remember whether you've left it on or not for that particular scene, which is quite handy as well. So those are kind of like the main ones, and then I've got a really interesting sound here. I love this sound. Now that is the pitch shift. So it's a polyoctaver. The pitch shift on this thing is brilliant. It's so good, and that's just an octave down. And the tracking is superb. It sounds really nice. And if you've used any of the neural plugins, there's a pitch shift on the Rabea one and the Petrucci and I think the new ones that have come out, and they're really good. So if you're going down a whole tone or two tones, it still tracks really well. It's amazing. So I've got this on, and at the same time the chorus comes on as well, so just to make it sound a little bit smoother. And that's quite a nice sort of sound for jingly jangly things if you want to do anything like that. Right, what else have I got? Okay, so we go to the heavy sound now. Okay, here we go. So this is a different amp now we're running. So all the other things are the same cab, same delay. I've got the Mad Pro on, which is just giving me a bit like a tube screamer in front of an amp, so it just makes it a little bit tighter, a little bit more gain. And the amp that I'm running for this is, so this is the PV605, which is basically the 5150 Mark 1, and it sounds really good. Tried lots of different ones out. The EVH ones are good, and it just for what I'm doing, it sounds really nice. It's really smooth and cuts through really nicely. And yeah. And okay, and then we've got that. Now I've got this one. I'm slightly addicted to this one. So I'm in a 3-piece band, and there's only one guitar, and so I've kind of gone back to the 80s and 90s stereo thing, and this is your real sort of rack days thing. So that kind of Paul Gilbert, addicted to that Rush kind of sound, and that's just the stereo chorus. Again, after the amp. So these are all post gain rather than pre-gain. You can do similar things with a pitch shifter. You can split the signal. Doesn't make a lot of difference sound wise. That's I just use the chorus, fairly slow chorus, and make sure it's nice and wide. And then other than that, what else have I got? What's this one? Oh, that's just the chorus, yeah. Done that one already. And then my lead sound. So basically, I take my heavy sound, and then my lead sound is exactly the same. Only I had a graphic EQ, and I just upped the level by about 4 dB. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Now, other things to think about using this live. When I use the other units as well, I use it with the Headrush FR cabs. I use 2 of those in stereo behind me, and each cab is 2,000 watts, so stupidly loud. And I was just blown away when I first heard them with the Moore unit. I was using amps before that, and I just thought it sounded amazing. The clarity, the power, and it sounds as good as, a valve amp in my ears, to be honest with you, once you tune them in properly. So this goes into a couple of FR cabs, and they're the 108 cabs, so it's the smaller cabs. The bigger ones doesn't make a lot of difference. Now, one thing you have to do with that setup is you have to then dial in a live sound. Now, the big difference, I would say, with this is, unlike a valve amp, where your settings bedroom volume, if you like, are completely different to what they would be live. Live, you turn the middle right up, bass down, treble, probably less gain, and it just sounds totally different. The first thing that you have to get used to with these is that nothing really changes that much, so the clarity is there. You don't have to fiddle around too much, but one thing you probably will need to do is get rid of all the bottom end. And a lot of people complain about the cabs and say, you can put them on stands, blah blah blah. You can do all that, but actually you don't need to. I just leave them on the floor wedged up. And then to get rid of the noise, if I then go back into the input page, there's a global EQ, and I have the global EQ on, and it's shelving out anything under about 148 hertz. Now, little tip if you're using the quad, if you use there's a high pass and the low pass filter. So I started with a low pass filter because I'd used that on some other units, and it worked fairly successfully. It did cut out some bottom end, but when I turned up loud, I got a terrible howling, sort of woofing kind of sound, which was driving me to distraction. I just couldn't get rid of it, and I tried dialing around, removing stuff in the bottom end to try to make it sound better, but it just sounded a bit weak. And then I just fiddled around, and I ended up using the shelf, so the shelf function. So I'm shelving rather than using the low pass high pass, and it just seems to be much more effective for my setup for the amps that I'm using. So I've got it on 148, the Q's on about 1, and the gain's about -12. So that basically shelves everything when I'm playing live, and it sounds quite tinny. If I put it on, I'll show you what I mean. So this is without it. If I put it on, here we go. So you can hear the difference. And I can turn that up stupidly loud, and I mean seriously loud, and it's just on the limit. It's right, it's controllable. So with the noise gate on and everything, I don't get any horrible feedback now, and it's not too woofy. It's quite a nice tight sound. It cuts through, but it just sounds massive, and everyone has said it just sounds amazing with that setup. So that's pretty much that. And then you can add, I haven't got it on this particular preset, but you can I've added an expression pedal, so I've got a wah pedal in as well, which is really cool. Great thing about these is it's time sensitive, so as soon as you touch it, it will come on. It's a bit like the Fractal Audio stuff. You don't have to switch it on and off. It will just come on as you move the expression pedal, and you can set the time for that, and it's really good. It's really handy. So there it is. I've put this up on the Cortex cloud, so it's under Red Dogs. My username is BluePeak222. So I've got 5 patches up there. This is one of them. There's a few other ones as well. So yeah, if you get a chance to download, have a go, see what you think. And it's really just, I suppose it's the result of a few months now just continually tweaking and working on it until I get a sound that sounds good, both here, but more importantly in a recording or rehearsal studio, because there are two different things. And I've gigged with it as well now, and it sounded really, really good. So yeah, there you go. Hope that is of some use.